wanted to mention the fact that due to the amalgamation of Nigeria in 1914, it was a marvel. Again, the jihad came in 1804, and Islam predated Christianity more than at least 500 years, around the 15th century, and Christianity was really established in 1842 or so. And yet, in the short span of less than 50 years after 1914, if we make allowance for the so-called phenomenon of rise Christianity in Africa, the population of Christian and Muslim was almost evenly split. Now, how do you explain that? The historian I mentioned, Maxwellian, had said they tried everything because Islam was the people's religion. It allowed indigenous allowed 4 wives and all whatnot, but yet Christianity that made you divorce, so-called, you had to marry 1 wife, almost change your whole culture, yet it had spread that in less than 50 years, the population was almost evenly the same.
Okay, thank you, brother. Brother David.
Okay, what I would like to add and say in 60 seconds is that recently Joseph, sorry, I wanted to say Joseph Stalin, but Vladimir Putin recently, I think it was 2020, made amendments to the Russian constitution, and one of the things they added is the word God to the constitution and heterosexual to the constitution, and that was in reaction to the promotion of gay and lesbianism that was going on in the West, and so he wanted to curb that, and he proposed that amendment to the Russian constitution to make sure that they don't go that direction. And while we know what is going on between Ukraine and Russia, we can still see how Putin is still being used to actually do what is right in regard to that. Thank you, brother. Pastor Butu.
Yeah, what I want to say is that it is the election of duty to wait for God to come and do for you what you can do for yourself. The history of abolition of slave trade and even the independence that we are celebrating today points back to men who stood out. You don't know what it means to stand against the colonial masters and demand for independence. People like Anthony Enahoro and co. You don't know. They were in their 20s. They were not like gray hair men. They were in their 20s. How old was Kwame Nkrumah? The Ghanaian nationalist, Patrice Mulumba. I mean, these were young men who were so much affected by Christian value system that went for independence. And we should not be passive citizens. We should be very, very active citizens, but very, very obedient people.
Thank you, sir. So let me just give us some rules. Because like Bro David said, if there's no government, everything falls apart. So I'll direct questions to certain of us, and we'll have 90 seconds to try to answer the question in 90 seconds. And then the speaker the question is not directed to can also attempt to answer the question in 60 seconds so that we can close on time. So the first question I'll direct to Brother David.
So you're the government now, eh?
Yes, I'm the government. I will be dictatorial. Okay. So to Bro David, you spoke about a government ordained by God and that which is approved by God. So the question is, since all governments are ordained by God, why should God ordain that which he does not approve? That's the question. For example, bad government. Why should God ordain Hitler and not approve? If it's the same God who ordains and approves or disapproves.
Okay. Well, it's actually, I want to actually move away from government just to bring about something And we actually know that God ordains all things for his good purpose, right? And we may not actually be aware of what the purpose is or what the sovereign will of God is, right? But what we know is that that will is good and it is perfect. So he ordains the government. However, the wickedness of man is what brings about the terrible things and activities that is being done. And if you look at Israel, for example, you see someone like Ahab, who was actually a wicked king. You realize that the word of God usually goes out to them to change their ways and to change their character and to turn back to God. But some of them would actually do, but most of them would still remain in their wickedness. So God's sovereignty does not remove human freedom to do what you want to do. So you are still quite responsible for your action.
Thank you. Any speaker want to add to that? Okay. So the next question I will direct to Brother Oche. And you say God raises and debases nations. That's what the person put them in quotes. So can we say Nigeria has been debased based on where we are now? So because you said God raises some, and if Nigeria were better, none of us would be complaining. But does it mean that God has brought us low?
The last time I checked, I'm not God, so I don't know if God has debased nations. But on a very serious note, one of the things you must understand, I did say at least, I said that, and I kept emphasizing the fact that I'm speaking from God's perspective. So in other words, my statement is not completely balanced. It means that it's just like when you're speaking on God's sovereignty and human responsibility, it means it has to be one-sided. So their role, in terms of first causes, is God that actually does these things. And if you take from scriptures, when God debases a nation, it's always for one reason, because of sin. That is always clear. If we take the case history of Israel, when Israel is always in tandem with God, no matter how big your Babylon and the rest, Israel that is so small will always prevail. No matter how strong the enemy is, Israel always prospers and progresses. But anytime they leave God, they always fail. Even when small nations attack them, they fail. But the reason why God sent them to captivity was because they had forsaken God and God did punish them. So if you check from the history, I gave a good example of Assyria. Assyria had become so proud and high-minded. So God felt that it was about the time for me to debase you and bring you down. So if I take it down to Nigeria's situation, as God debased Nigeria, well, if we trace from our history, I think I have very few time. If we check from the fact that if you read from the 60s or the 50s and see how far Nigeria has degenerated morally, check our music, our movies, and in terms of religion, even the context or the quality of even Pentecostal Christianity compared to 20 years ago, I think it's safe to say that our condition, they say a nation deserves the leaders it gets, and our condition really shows that at least God is actually, we are under judgment, which we can't escape that conclusion.
Yeah. So. And I agree with Oche that we are actually debased, and we deserve what we are passing through. If you look at what led to civil war, was very, very unnecessary, isn't it? He just went to make an accord, a gentleman agreement. We have a government from 1960s that does not keep to their words. I mean, what was the Abuja Accord does not mean balkanize Nigeria. It's saying, let's respect each other. I don't know the name of that. There wants to be is it a unitary system? No, not a unitary system. A kind of a confederalism where each regions are, and we are back to that place again. When you hear the word of power devolution or power that Atiku is talking about and all this thing, we are back to Aburi again. All this government, even to this government can stop ASU strike within 24 hours. This government can stop IPOB agitation under 24 hours. We are so or the recalcitrant. We are so stubborn and stiff-necked. How can you account for the country where 700,000 barrels of crude oil can be stolen and you can't trace it, as if a needle had just fallen in a haystack? How can you talk about a country where 300 people are being taken and you are saying you don't know 300 human beings? That is more than that this hall can contain. If I kidnap all of you here now, to take you to a forest in Abuja, am I not going to use roads? I think we are under God's judgment. If we are not careful, the worst is still ahead of us, because we are stubborn people. We are misusing our resources. The money we waste, the wastages in this country, is unimaginable. And I'm so thankful that God is still allowing rain to fall in this country.
Thank you very much. So, Pastor Abuja, the next question is to you. You gave an example of Acts 5 where we can disobey the government. Now, what form would this disobedience look like? For example, we know of Gandhi, passive resistance or passive disobedience, whereby fasting and refusing to do certain things, you disobey the government. Is there a place for revolution? If this government is pushing you to sin, is there a place for revolution? Another example somebody gave, because there are multiple questions addressing this, is, for example, America, where in the 1770s rather, they fought against the British for their freedom and all that. So is there a place to fight a government as Christians to get freedom?
As the church, I mean, that's where I little bit disagree with Martin Luther King Jr. I mean, of course, those things were necessary. They were pushed to the wall, you know. What we will do in an event like what happened in the civil rights movement, we don't really know. We will ask God for wisdom on what to do that particular day. But on a normal day, like during COVID-19, the American government were pushing restriction too far. And John MacArthur opened his church and said, if you want to arrest me, arrest me. We have to worship our God. And we can do it responsibly and safely. Because the government was trying to use that COVID-19 to persecute the church. Or if the government say, the way the West is going now, that even some Bible schools in America are now under pressure to admit gay students or risk being shut down. At that point, you have to say, we are not admitting gay students. We are not admitting them. And if it means shutting down your school, so be it. And find another way of training your pastors. If the government say now, government will be appointing pastors for churches, you have to say no. This is the way the Bible says you appoint pastors. These are the kind of things we should do. If the government says you should not have more than one child, and then begin to practice infanticide, and then you are pregnant for the second child, you can run away and hide from the police. Like in China, they will take you by force and remove the baby by force. That's what they've been doing over the years. So you have to run away. In that case, you are disobeying the government and all that. And then, I don't know if this is extreme. I was reading a German theologian, it should be Joachim Doma, who says all the laws of God are not even of equal validity, equal absolute weight. For instance, the law to obey your father and mother, and the law to obey God, which one comes first? Yeah. So if your parents said, you are not going to church again, you can't say to God, you must say I should respect my parents. No, you are not respecting your parents. You have to go to church. And whatever your parents are going to do to you, let them do it. Let them do it. But for a church to organize revolution and take up arms against the state, we will not go that far. We will not go that far.
Let me let me still further stretch it again because the question is asked like 3 or 4 times. So, for example, during the Second World War, when Hitler was in power, terrorizing the entire Europe, there was a man called Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was part of the revolution. So it was not as a church, but as individual Christians. There was of the Puritan era where some people like John Owen would have guns. So is there a place? We're not talking about the church corporately. So individuals like us now, maybe Bro Chair, can just go and join a revolution to topple an existing evil and ungodly government.
Kaipas talking about institutional church and organic church. The church as a body, and the church as a body should not be in the forefront of organizing rebellion against the state. But I belong to a community. If there is, the other time there was tension in the town that Boko Haram has entered town. Remember I told you here that they will meet us in Area 1. So they will meet us on the street. I'm not going to hide under my bed and allow my Muslim friends to go and fight Boko Haram at Area 1 and say I'm a Christian. So if the Boko Haram are on Area 1 killing people, we organize ourselves as youths if the police are not yet forthcoming and form a vigilante and support the police to quench that. If there's an evil government in place and people are making plans to overthrow them through violence means, as a Christian, I'll be very cautious. I will pray. I don't know what I will do, but I will pray. But I will not join people, start making bombs. But if you live in an apartheid South Africa, you see, these things are not like, they are not flat. If you live in an apartheid South Africa, where some leaders had to fly to Zambia, they were training them on the ground, KKK was training them, sometimes they were here and now. I mean, that was circumstantial. But I will not really be part of rebellion against government. I will pray. I don't know. I don't know what you guys think. like the days of Abacha, the day of Abacha, there was Nadeko. There were a rebellion under Abacha. But ultimately, it was not Nadeko that brought Abacha to an end. It was God that actually brought Abacha to an end. So I don't know to the extent the Christian can just organize rebellion. I don't know. But if it's on the street, like when I was in Kano, I mean, we'll meet them on the streets.
Maybe we'll organize rebellion in accordance with the Constitution. Because sometimes the government goes out of step with the Constitution and then the people have to force them to, I don't know.
I guess my answer might not be too popular because I'm a rebel with a cause in a sense. So I believe in revolution. If you look at Romans 13, it says the government was instituted to do right. So if a government leaves its duty of doing right, maybe become draconian like Abacha or a dictatorialist, I believe it's a Christian duty. I may be wrong. As Pastor said, it's not clear-cut. Okay, one of the things I disagreed with Calvin in the Institutes of Christian Religion was he didn't believe at any other circumstance that Christians will raise weapons, but I think I have the Puritans on my side. And even John Knox disagreed with him. And today, as the King of, if you listen to the King of England taking oaths, he said to protect the integrity of both Scotland. They tried to force Anglicanism on Scotland, and they fought. People gave their lives and died. So even a man like John Knox, the Queen of Mary Scott, had to say, I fear his prayers even more than 1,000. So they fought to keep their independence and their religion as that. The same thing with the American Revolution. The same thing with even in Germany at one point where Roman Catholics wanted to impose Roman Catholic, they had to defend that. So I would say if it gets to a situation whereby, as I said, it's not clear-cut, it's left for each Christian's God. If it gets to a situation whereby a country has become obsolete, maybe corrupt, or maybe in a military dictatorship, I was a soldier under Abacha, and as a Christian, I felt the so-called the killings and everything. I'll take it upon myself to do a coup and topple the government. That's what I.
Yeah, but not as an organized church.
Sorry, Eleazar. I don't get you. You say you don't believe in a referendum. So how does this two cohere?
Yeah. Now, in the context of one indivisible country.
Yeah.
That's one. And I say I have an evil leader.
So before we go, I'm not sure everybody understands what the referendum is.
It means that people decide whether they want to stay in a nation or not. So if I believe, as I believe that the unity of Nigeria is sacrosanct, and I believe it's through the bailout you can change a leader, an evil leader, or not. So I believe if you have, and maybe it comes to a point, and mind you, I must interject here. I remember when I heard my view, somebody sent me MacArthur's teaching on Romans 13 on how you must serve government, blah, blah, blah. So I smiled when MacArthur himself turned against the American government and opened his church, while some Christians still stuck to maintaining the COVID-19 listing. So if there's a government today in Nigeria that is bad in leadership and is putting laws to frustrate Christians, and not even laws that are unjust, I believe it's the role of Christians, I wouldn't say the church, the role of every sensible and sane Nigeria. If you hit the streets to protest, lives will go down. You mentioned the Arab Spring. One person burnt himself. People were taking down lives. The same thing with Sudan. Sudan, since 1983, Al-Shabaab, the leader Omar Shabaab, fought the Christian in South Sudan for more than 30 years. They accused him of genocide against humanity. It didn't bring him down. But the Christians stood and fought against him till today. And one day they increased bread, and the citizens entered the country at the top of the country. So I'm saying that if there's a bad government today, and we can't change them through the bill, we're not saying the people want to leave the country, but we just want the government to change. I believe.
Yeah, but that's the inconsistency, because I believe, I was in England when they did the Scottish referendum, because sometimes it is lack of giving people peaceful means that end up in revolution. Yeah. And this is not a good, our brother in the East have different shades of what they are pursuing, but I have been consistent for the past 15 years. Why don't you conduct a referendum for Biafra? And said, and then as a government, if you don't want them to go, persuade them, push more development there, and campaign for the Nigerian state. And I can guarantee you, if that is the route you've taken for the past 15 years, IPOB agitation will have been so minimal by now. You see, because even though we know God sovereignly brought us together, the history of why we came together, of course, no nation came together perfectly. It has always been like that. But there are many periods where we will have given ourselves opportunity to reevaluate our social contract. And the few elites, and the elites today are those guys who took power by guns and making those conversations difficult. And that's where I disagree with you on the issue of referendum. Let people say yes or no. Let people say yes or no.
Because of our time.
Yeah.
So I know this question is a very big question. But I think we can safely say that on the matter of revolution, first of all, we must have exhausted all legal means. That's what I'm hearing from all of us. The means of protest, the means of using the ballot. We must have exhausted every legal means possible. We must go back to which is what the Americans do. They go back to exhaust every means possible. And then, even then, it's not a sanction to go and take your gun. There are other things that must come to place. Because we must be careful not to say anybody take your gun. But it might get to a point where, as an individual Christian, you are in the army, you can use military means then to bring down, to cause change. But then it's not for all of us that we're looking for ways to go and take guns. So this question I'll ask us to answer in 60 seconds, starting from Bro David. And this person, two questions merged into one. If Nigeria has been debased like before, like for example Assyria, and the church is moving more and more towards profanity and debauchery, where then is the hope? When you have an unrepentant church, you have a church that is constantly going down, declining. Can you really say there is hope? In 60 seconds, Bro David.
Yeah, there is hope actually. It's not safe to say that Christianity has been in decline. And why I'm saying that is that there was a time that Elijah thought he was actually the only one. And God told him that there are so many prophets who have actually not bowed down to Baal, who are not serving Baal. So God is actually working, but it is not all of the work of God that is evident to us as the people. God is saving people in Nigeria every day. By every day, I mean always, is continuing to do his work in Nigeria. We may not see, we will not be aware of all of his workings, but he is definitely working in the affairs of Nigeria, and we may not be aware of it. So there is actually hope.
Thank you, Brother.
There's always hope. We serve a God who is mighty and who is great. So there's hope. There's always hope. And one of the benefits of reading scriptures and church history is to see that it is always at the time where there's despair and hopelessness that God always intervenes. Like if you get in the history of revivals, in the 18th century, the Great Evangelical Awakening, at that time, Christianity had become ridiculed. It was called the cruel age. It was even every third house in England they were making gin. So it was almost a hopeless situation. But what did God do? It was that particular century that God raised John Wesley, George Whitefield, and the rest. And it was that revival that spared England the bloodshed that happened in France in the French Revolution in 1789. And it was the same revival that set the pace in making England an industrial power, the Industrial Revolution that transformed England, that led to even the wave of missionary activity all across the world. So there's always hope. Even now that things are desperate, it's the time for us to pray, especially for revival. If you have a selfish reason for Nigeria to get better, pray for revival. God can do anything, more than we can ever think or imagine.
Pastor Butsu?
Yeah, and I think Nigeria is even more in a better place compared to America. And I say this with confidence. See, the bad guys in the church are actually in the minority, but they have the airwaves, they have the advertisements, they have the televisions, they have the radio, they have money. It's a cartel. But there are a lot of churches in this country that are actually good, that are preaching the truth. I don't want us to say, oh, we are finished. All you need to do is to travel. You can't just sit in Abuja here and make that conclusions. You have to go to Taraba to see. You have to go to Plateau State to see. You have to go to some Benue State to see that people are still strong with evangelical faith and they are not compromising. But the bad eggs are they are in the cities and they have the power of the air. And today, we should be thankful that it's even illegal in Nigeria by the law of Nigeria to practice homosexuality openly. Today in Nigeria, you can still go to school and people will pray to God. You can have a government gathering. They say, let one imam pray and let one Christian pray. Just as Oche was saying, that is a good thing. Some countries now that is out of the window. Is gone. And they are teaching children feminism, LGBTQ, and all that stuff. And there's hope. There's hope.
Okay, thank you, Pastor. So we have about 3 questions which I want us to tackle in 3 minutes, if possible. The first question is to Pastor Abutu. So you said, okay, not you said, but Jesus teaches us to pray that kingdom come. Paul says, Colossians 3, set your affection on things above. And this other person is saying, you said we should not follow other people to complain. Rather, we should study scripture and see what God is saying. So, are you saying that we should mind our... So, in a sense, what you mean is that...
It was said that say that. It was said that say
how do we balance the scale? This is what I said to the last speaker. I'm trying to merge it into one. How do you balance Christians living in the now and living for eternity? Especially when it comes to the idea of living in Nigeria. How do you balance it?
Yeah, I mean... As Christians, we daily pray for Christ to come back. We know that the best of this world cannot compare to eternity. That is a given. We know that even if our streets are paved with gold, there is a better city whose foundation is God. And every genuine born-again Christian is looking forward to that kingdom. In the intervening period, we have a task of preaching the gospel. You need peace to move around to preach the gospel. You need a kind of toleration for you to be able to practice Christianity freely. So that's why we participate. As we participate in the government, we are not participating in government selfishly for our own benefit. We are doing this to the glory of God. And God is glorified when his kingdom is being established among us by sinners coming to faith in their droves. Yeah. But our eyes are on that goal.
Yeah, so to be heavenly minded is not to be earthly useless. Bro David, how should a Christian do politics? So am I to be a Christian in politics? For example, I don't believe in homosexuality. Why should I take that and impose on a population that believes in homosexuality? So the question is, somebody say, the question is, how should a Christian navigate in the realms of, are you merely going there to say, okay, everybody must obey the Bible? Or are you going there to say, okay, this one does not believe, this one does not believe, let's come to there and talk, then let's establish a law.
Okay. Pastor Abutu said in the last session, and he said something about theocracy and the fact that, and I agree that as Christians we are not actually trying to create a Bible government, so to say, like what they had in the Old Testament in Nigeria or in any other country. Instead, we are to be salt and we are to be the light. And that will definitely involve us promoting godly causes. For example, you mentioned homosexuality. I can also look at something like abortion and all of those things. We'll definitely fight for what is right, that is against homosexuality and against abortion. And if you say, why should I impose my own will on another person? Well, the truth is also that the other person wants to impose his own will on me as well. So somebody has to impose something on somebody, right? So it's either I wait for them to impose their own will on me, or which is even wrong biblically, or I champion the cause of Scripture, which is, of course, against homosexuality and abortion and things like that. And
it would take homosexuality on its own merit. Paul appealed to law of nature.
Yeah, natural law.
Natural law, not even the biblical law. When he was condemning homosexuality, he was appealed to the divine revelation, and he said even nature teaches that this is when you are doing it the other way, it is unnatural, and it is you can appeal to the law of nature. And that's why sometimes you should be careful as Christians not to come to a particular culture and throw everything away like in one fell swoop, as if the culture you have come into had no validity. Even though the culture was pagan, there were human beings that have lived for 1,000 years, and they have some kind of idea with the culture of respect, the culture of norms and taboos. I mean, why as Christians should enhance those things and say, this is correct. It's just that the worldview is ungodly, but this is not bad, and we should promote that.
Yeah. So you want to add to it?
Yeah, just quickly.
Yes.
You read the preamble of our constitution that says a nation under God. So at least the benefit was you can argue for at least the chief main religion. You can have things like that. At least some laws that are agreeable to Muslims and Christians. And one principle you must always understand as a Christian in entering politics is the art of the possible. You can't do everything in politics. And as a Christian, you have to seek the best possible outcome. So it means that you have to be juggling compromises and all that. The one thing that is sacrosanct that you mustn't compromise principle of scriptures. But beyond that, there is give and take. There's compromise you have to do in the context of politics. That's why a movie I love so much, Lincoln in 2012, where you see the way he juggles, they actually get the amendment that ends slavery. You get to understand that politics is, maybe dirty in some sense.
It's not dirty.
So final question, I want Moderator to be the main answer to that question, and then the both of us can use this. So there's a word now, Japan. So is it a biblical thing to run away from your country? If yes, what is the biblical way to run?
That's a very difficult question for me. So is it a biblical thing? Do I have a biblical answer to leave your country? Well, Jesus actually ran from his parents took him and ran when Herod wanted to kill him.
Yeah.
And you have, I can do in the times of the judges, you had, and if you look at Ruth, it was the context of when the Midianites had impoverished Judah. So Ruth, Naomi and the rest had to leave this thing. So, yeah, you can argue biblically.
But also, it was God now using it.
Yeah, so I'll use both of them. Now, in Jesus' case, it was a blessing. He went, at least the context, stayed in Egypt and had to come back. But in Ruth's case, and at least if you compare scripture to scripture, it was when at the time when Gideon actually came and became a blessing. It was not actually right for them to have left Israel at that particular point. So is it biblical to japa or leave the country? I think you have to settle that with God. That's one. And secondly, what else? If there's a biblical,
You can't wait to run.
how? I don't think I have an answer.
You run never to Pastor Butu. There's 60 seconds there for David, then that's the end of the Q&A.
Yeah.
How should we approach that matter of running away? Because things are bad here.
And we are Reformed Baptists. We believe in liberty of conscience. And we also believe in liberty of conscience and the priesthood of all believers. This matters is in that zone where you cannot legislate. In fact, it's not even good as Christians to begin to put fear and doubt in people's mind. You can do this from the pulpit. Allow people freedom to... Migration is a human thing. Huh? Some of our friends, where you came from, said they came from Israel. Yes. Yeah, you came from Israel. So. And some of us say we came from Egypt. Even the Yoruba said they came from Egypt. You know, all kinds of... We are moving. We are moving people. And there's nothing wrong. We should not make it look like it's wrong. Nobody is running from this country. It's just that if a professor is earning 450,000, and that same professor can earn 3 million per month in another country, I mean, it is even ungodly to say, I'm patriotic for what? For what? We have enough population. I mean, I don't know. God forgive me. I don't think that is... Because you have to look after your family, isn't it? You have to produce decent meal for your family. You have to have roof over your head. Because the government you are dying for are not managing in any way. Look at their convoy. Look at their bulletproofs. They are preaching patriotism to you. And if there's anything that has come through the... without supporting the man, Obi campaign, so far so good. He's saying, they asked him, what are you going to do about the nurses and doctors that are migrating? He said, open more doctor school and produce more doctors and produce more nurses and supply them abroad. What is 200 million for? Train more nurses. If they need our nurses, we will give it to them. I don't have foreign exchange repatriation, and then you are good for it. If they need our lawyers, let's train more lawyers. Let's build more, it's all the zones, everywhere. Let's build more school of nursing. Since they are looking for our nurses, let's supply them nurses. If they are looking for pastors, let's supply them pastors. So we should not bring this into that kind of biblical and start putting guilt on people. Say, that is not a biblical thing to do. No. Let's leave it to people's individual conscience as Christians to work that out.
So it can be good or bad depending on it's on an individual basis.
It is bad when that person is selfish.
Yes.
As a Christian, you are not contented. You are not what God has blessed you with. You are not contented. You are so selfish. You are envious of your friends that have gone to US. You too want to make a name for yourself. Family of Adegbogun, we are now in Canada. And then you are just fighting. I mean, there are some persons in this country that are working in CBN. They are also jackpot. And I say, God, what are you jackpot for? Look at what you are earning right now. Somebody is earning almost to 5, 6, 7 million naira per month, and he's want to go to Canada and be an attendant at a care home. I mean, that is rubbish. You want to raise shoulder and say, me too. My kids are in Harvard too. That one is sinful. It's not a Christian thing. But look at my brother Ese, who is serving in IT, and the country is not having an environment for him to flourish. And God opened that door for him to go to Canada, where he can really become something great, with an idea that one day I will come back and do much more. I mean, I was pressured in every way not to come back to this country, but I have an idea. It's an individual thing. And I know many pastors that went to train in pastor school, and then they disappear into the country and never came back. It is to them and their conscience.
But David, do you have anything to say? Because our time is fast spent.
Yeah, just 10 seconds actually. And it's the second part where he said, is there a biblical way to do it? And the thing is that there are people that actually japa, and it's because of compromise. The process of japaing itself is
full of compromise.
It's full of compromise. Yes. So I would say that if there's a way to japa without compromises, then fine. But if anything that would involve compromises, it's already showing that it's not...
Like you are going as a tourist. You are on the visa as a tourist, but in your mind, you have already arranged with your family there that you are not coming back. You are going to change the date of your birth. You are going to change a lot of documents about you. You know all those things. Eh? You are going to lie. Everything, your application is full of lies. And then you end up in Canada. You're not applying for asylum. You not say you are from Lagos, but you are claiming you are from Maduka, so that they can give you a asylum. That's not the biblical way. Don't lie. And there are many Christians, some of you are even here. That process of jackpine, the way you are going about it, you end up in hell. What shall it profit a man if he gain the whole world and lose his own soul? It is better to be poor, and this is serious. It is better to live under the bridge and be a righteous person with integrity than to be on the street of Europe running drugs and then paying pastors to pray for you. You will face God. So your fear should be to God. Have integrity. Have integrity. It is true that our passport will regain his respect.
Thank you, Pastor. Roger, you have 30 seconds.
I'll say a word about patriotism. As I said, I'm one of those that believe in this country, Nigeria. So economic situations should not be the main thing that determines our life. Now, if Nigeria is going to get better, we want to change this country, and all of us are running away, Nigeria can't change. And to change Nigeria must come at a great cost and sacrifice. So when we think about patriotism, yes, our leaders have failed, blah, 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 but we put that at the back of our mind. If Nigeria will change, it will come at a great price. Some of us will become poor for that. Some of us will lose property. Some of us will have to give our lives so that 10, 15, 20 years, our children will sit under the tree that we planted to reap and have a better Nigeria. So put that at the back of your mind. Money going the way, it's good. I, for one, am not prepared to leave this country.
Thank you so much, our speakers. We can return to your seats. So in the next few minutes, we'll be out of here within 15 to 20 minutes. We're going to bring our country before God. And some of you have received some prayer points to pray. So I'll just ask you to, the ushers will give you the mic, and then you kick us off in prayer. So it's congregational prayer, which means that they stand up and pray. We are praying. We are not sleeping. We are praying. We are listening to them, and we say amen. Let us pray.